Hey guys, it's Mrs. Pennington back with another video about The Circuit by Francisco Jimenez. If you need a link to the book, it is down below the YouTube video. If you're not watching this on YouTube, this is a link to the book. This week, we're going to be reviewing chapters 7 and 8 and reading chapter 9 together. And then at the end of the video, I will give you an assignment and then tell you what chapter I would like you to read before next week's video. So I'm going to go ahead and read to you what I wrote on my chapter chart for chapters 7 and 8. Then I'll show it to you. And then I'll do the same thing with the character chart. And then we'll be ready to read chapter 9. So chapter 7, the location is Mr. Jacobson's vineyard. So in this chapter, it's a lot about the bird. They get a bird. It's undocumented, meaning it came over illegally. They name it El Perico. They all love it. The family teaches it tricks and teaches it how to say certain phrases. However, the bird becomes really attached to a cat that lives next door. And so when the couple who owns the cat comes over without the cat, the bird gets really annoyed and mad and loud and makes loud noises. So there's one day where this happens and the dad is very stressed out, Francisco's dad, and he ends up whacking it and killing it. So it's very sad. Francisco and the rest of his family are devastated. Francisco sort of runs away just for I guess maybe like an hour, and prays a lot. They have a little burial ceremony for the bird, and then Francisco says he goes and visits the bird's grave every day until they leave to go back to Corcoran to pick cotton. And that's pretty much what happens in chapter 7. In chapter 8, they are back in Corcoran picking cotton. They find work at a cotton labor camp, and they get a sort of one-room cabin. Francisco doesn't get his own sack to pick cotton, which is sort of a growing up type of thing. It's almost like when you're old enough, you get your own sack for picking. So the fact that he doesn't have one yet makes him feel a little bit less than. So he does still pick cotton, and they now have 5 kids in the family, and I added their names to the character chart, so we'll get to that in a minute. It was raining a lot at first, so they couldn't pick cotton, and this stresses out the father a lot. He smokes a lot of cigarettes and takes a lot of aspirin and doesn't get a whole lot of sleep. They pick cotton, finally, and Trampita is now the one that watches the younger ones. They end up picking 600 pounds, which equals $18. That's what they get for it. They are told they can stay and work until La Bola, or the second picking, and then that's when they have to leave and find different work. And then at the end of the chapter, they find a new spot to pick some very last-minute cotton, and it's really cold outside. And Francisco finds that he's not able to pick in the cold and realizes that he has not earned his own cotton sack. So he sort of comes to terms with the fact that he hasn't gotten one, and he almost thinks that it makes sense. Like, it makes sense that I haven't gotten one yet. I'm not old enough. I'm not strong enough like Roberto. Okay, so let me show that to you, and then we'll move on to the character chart. Okay, so here's 7 and 8. I did have to move on to the back, so I'll show you that in a second. Okay, and then the rest of it. I did kind of write a lot for this chapter, but you choose what you think is important to write. This is what I wrote. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to write that. Then the new characters, and these were very briefly mentioned, but we have Mr. Jacobson, who owns the vineyard, El Perico, which is the bird. If you'd like to see those are the bottom 2. We also have, I put these 3 together, Chico, Pilar, and Caterina. That's the couple who owns the cat. So they're very briefly mentioned in that chapter, but I put them together. They live on Mr. Jacob's vineyard as well. And then Ruben and Rora are Francisco's little brother and little sister. So we haven't really learned a whole lot about them, but we know that they have been born. So it's important that we know about them. Okay, so now we're ready to get started reading chapter 9. If you haven't already, go ahead and go to that link and get your book ready so that you can read along. It's important to read along. Otherwise, you might zone out, and it's good to practice reading comprehension. Okay? All right. This one's about 10 pages, so it's a little bit longer than ones we've read in the past 2 weeks. All right, so this chapter, chapter 9, is actually titled The Circuit. It was that time of year again. Ito, the strawberry sharecropper, did not smile. It was natural. The peak of the strawberry season was over, and in the last few days, the workers, most of them braceros, were not picking as many boxes as they had during June and July. Hold on just a second. My cat was scratching on her little scratching toy, and it was making really loud noises, but I'll give it back to her after we're done. Don't worry. Okay. So if I were you, I would go ahead and add Ito to my character chart, that he's this strawberry sharecropper. That means that he sort of owns the land, but not really. He's in debt to the people who own it, and he has to pay them. It's sort of a really kind of messed up situation, but for the most part, he sort of owns the land, so he's in charge. As the last days of August disappeared, so did the number of braceros. Braceros are seasonal workers, so workers who only work during the cotton season or the strawberry season. Sunday, only one, the best picker, came out to work. I liked him. Sometimes we talked during our half-hour lunch break. That is how I found out he was from Jalisco, the same state in Mexico my family was from. That Sunday was the last time I saw him. When the sun had tired and sunk below the mountains, Ito signaled us that it was time to go home. Ya es hora, he yelled in his broken Spanish. Those were the words I waited for 12 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week, week after week, and the thought of not hearing them again saddened me. So that phrase means that's it. Like, that's it, that's all we can pick, we're done here. So Francisco probably waited for those words because it meant he got to go home, but now it's almost like he's sad that he won't get to hear them again. As we drove home, Papa did not say a word. With both hands on the wheel, he stared at the dirt road. My older brother, Roberto, was also silent. He leaned his head back and closed his eyes. Once in a while, he cleared from his throat the dust that blew in from outside. Yes, it was that time of year. When I opened the front door to the shack, I stopped. Everything we owned was neatly packed in cardboard boxes. Suddenly, I felt even more the weight of hours, days, weeks, and months of work. I sat down on a box. The thought of having to move to Fresno and knowing what was in store for me there brought tears to my eyes. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed thinking about how much I hated this move. A little before 5 o'clock in the morning, Papa woke everyone up. A few minutes later, the yelling and screaming of my little brothers and sister, for whom the move was a great adventure, broke the silence of dawn. Soon after, the barking of the dogs accompanied them. While we packed the breakfast dishes, Papa went outside to start the carachita. That was the name Papa gave his old black Plymouth. He had bought it in a used car lot in Santa Rosa. Papa was very proud of his little jalopy. He had a right to be proud of it. He had spent a lot of time looking at other cars before buying this one. When he finally chose the carachita, he checked it thoroughly before driving it out of the car lot. He examined every inch of the car. He listened to the motor, tilting his head from side to side like a parrot, trying to detect any noises that spelled car trouble. After being satisfied with the looks and sounds of the car, Papa then insisted on knowing who the original owner was. He never did find out from the car salesman, but he bought the car anyway. Papa figured the original owner must have been an important man, because behind the rear seat of the car, he found a blue necktie. Papa parked the car out in front and left the motor running. Listo, he yelled. Listo means ready, like we're ready to go. Without saying a word, Roberto and I began to carry the boxes out to the car. Roberto carried the 2 big boxes, and I carried the 2 smaller ones. Papa then threw the mattress on top of the car roof and tied it with ropes to the front and rear bumpers. Everything was packed except Mama's pot. It was an old, large galvanized pot she had picked up at an army surplus store in Santa Maria. The pot had many dents and nicks, and the more dents and nicks it acquired, the more Mama liked it. Mi hola, she used to say proudly, meaning my pot. I held the front door open as Mama carefully carried out her pot by both handles, making sure not to spill the cooked beans. When she got to the car, Papa reached out to help her with it. Roberta opened the rear car door, and Papa gently placed it on the floor behind the front seat. All of us then climbed in. Papa sighed, wiped the sweat from his forehead with his sleeve, and said wearily, "Es todo," which means, "That's it." As we drove away, I felt a lump in my throat. I turned around and looked at our little shack for the last time. At sunset, we drove into a labor camp near Fresno. Since Papa did not speak English, Mama asked the camp foreman if he needed any more workers. "We don't need no more," said the foreman, scratching his head. "Check with Sullivan down the road. Can't miss him. He lives in a big white house with a fence around it." When we got there, Mama walked up to the house. She went through a white gate, past a row of rose bushes, up the stairs to the house. She rang the doorbell. The porch light went on, and a tall, husky man came out. They exchanged a few words. After the man went in, Mama clasped her hands and hurried back to the car. "We have work. Mr. Sullivan said we can stay there the whole season," she said, gasping and pointing to an old garage near the stables. The garage was worn out by the years. It had no windows. The walls, eaten by termites, strained to support the roof full of holes. The dirt floor, populated by earthworms, looked like a gray road map. That night, by the light of a kerosene lamp, we unpacked and cleaned our new home. Roberto swept away the loose dirt, leaving the hard ground. Papa plugged the holes in the walls with old newspapers and tin can tops. Mama fed my little brothers and sister. Papa and Roberto then brought in the mattress and placed it on the far corner of the garage. "Mama, you and the little one sleep on the mattress. Roberto, Panchito, and I will sleep under the trees," Papa said. Early the next morning, Mr. Sullivan showed us where his crop was, and after breakfast, Papa, Roberto, and I headed for the vineyard to pick. Around 9 o'clock, the temperature had risen to almost 100 degrees. I was completely soaked in sweat, and my mouth felt as if I had been chewing on a handkerchief. I walked over to the end of the row, picked up the jug of water we had brought, and began drinking. "Don't drink too much, you'll get sick," Roberto shouted. No sooner had he said that than I felt sick to my stomach. I dropped to my knees and let the jug roll off my hands. I remained motionless with my eyes glued on the hot, sandy ground. All I could hear was the drone of insects. Slowly, I began to recover. I poured water over my face and neck and watched the dirty water run down my arms to the ground. I still felt dizzy when we took a break to eat lunch. It was past 2 o'clock. We sat underneath a large walnut tree that was on the side of the road. While we ate, Papa jotted down the number of boxes we had picked. Roberto drew designs on the ground with a stick. Suddenly, I noticed Papa's face turn pale as he looked down the road. "Here comes the school bus," he whispered loudly in alarm. Instinctively, Roberto and I ran and hid in the vineyards. We did not want to get in trouble for not going to school. The neatly dressed boys about my age got off. They carried books under their arms. After they crossed the street, the bus drove away. Roberto and I came out from hiding and joined Papa. "Tienen que tener cuidado," he warned us, and that means you have to be careful. So it's not that they don't want to go to school, but they have to help pick in order to help the family get more money. So the government doesn't understand that, and it's illegal for kids not to go to school. So they face this problem where if they're seen out of school, then they could get in trouble. So that's why they ran and hid. After lunch, we went back to work. The sun kept beating down. The buzzing insects, the wet sweat, and the hot, dry dust made the afternoon seem to last forever. Finally, the mountains around the valley reached out and swallowed the sun. Within an hour, it was too dark to continue picking. The vines blanketed the grapes, making it difficult to see the bunches. "Vámonos," said Papa, signaling to us that it was time to quit work. That means, let's go. Papa then took out a pencil and began to figure out how much we had earned our first day. He wrote down numbers, crossed some out, wrote down some more. "15," he murmured. That means 15, so they earned $15. When we arrived home, we took a cold shower underneath a water hose. We then sat down to eat dinner around some wooden crates that served as a table. Mama had cooked a special meal for us. We had rice and tortillas with carne con chile, my favorite dish. The next morning, I could hardly move. My body ached all over. I felt little control over my arms and legs. This feeling went on every morning for days until my muscles finally got used to the work. It was Monday, the first week of November. The grape season was over, and now I could go to school. I woke up early that morning and lay in bed, looking at the stars and savoring the thought of not going to work and of starting 6th grade for the first time that year. Since I could not sleep, I decided to get up and join Papa and Roberto at breakfast. I sat at the table across from Roberto, but I kept my head down. I did not want to look up and face him. I knew he was sad. He was not going to school today. He was not going tomorrow, or next week, or next month. He would not go until the cotton season was over, and that was sometime in February. I rubbed my hands together and watched the dry, acid-stained skin fall to the floor in little rolls. When Papa and Roberto left for work, I felt relief. I walked to the top of a small grade next to the shack and watched the carachita disappear in the distance in a cloud of dust. 2 hours later, around 8 o'clock, I stood by the side of the road waiting for the school bus number 20. When it arrived, I climbed in. Everyone was either busy talking or yelling. I sat in an empty seat in the back. When the bus stopped in front of the school, I felt very nervous. I looked out the bus window and saw boys and girls carrying books under their arms. I put my hands in my pant pockets and walked to the principal's office. When I entered, I heard a woman's voice say, "May I help you?" I was startled. I had not heard English for months. For a few seconds, I remained speechless. I looked at the lady who waited for an answer, but my first instinct was to answer her in Spanish, but I held back. Finally, after struggling for English words, I managed to tell her that I wanted to enroll in the 6th grade. After answering many questions, I was led to the classroom. Mr. Lima, the 6th grade teacher, greeted me and assigned me a desk. He then introduced me to the class. I was so nervous and scared at that moment when everyone's eyes were on me that I wished I were with Papa and Roberto picking cotton. After taking roll, Mr. Lima gave the class an assignment for the first hour. "The first thing we have to do this morning is finish reading the story we began yesterday," he said enthusiastically. He walked up to me, handed me an English book, and asked me to read. "We are on page 125, he said politely. When I heard this, I felt my blood rush to my head. I felt dizzy. "Would you like to read?" he asked hesitantly. I opened the book to page 125. My mouth was dry. My eyes began to water. I could not begin. "You can read later," Mr. Lima said understandingly. During recess, I went into the restroom and opened my English book to page 125. I began to read in a low voice, pretending I was in class. There were many words I did not know. He closed the book and headed back to the classroom. I closed the book and headed back to the classroom. Mr. Lima was sitting at his desk correcting papers. When I entered, he looked up at me and smiled. I felt better. I walked up to him and asked if he could help me with the new words. "Gladly," he said. The rest of the month, I spent my lunch hours working on English with Dr. Lima, my best friend at school. One Friday, during lunch hour, Mr. Lima asked me to take a walk with him to the music room. "Do you like music?" he asked me when we entered the building. "Yes, I like corridos." So corridos are bullfights, and there's music at bullfights. I looked up that translation. It may not be accurate, but he's basically saying that he likes certain type of music. He then picked up a trumpet, blew on it, and handed it to me. The sound gave me goosebumps. I knew that sound. I had heard it in many corridos. "How would you like to learn how to play it?" he asked. He must have read my face before I could answer, because before I could answer, he added, "I'll teach you how to play it during our lunch hours." That day, I could hardly wait to tell Papa and Mama the great news. As I got off the bus, my little brothers and sister ran up to meet me. They were yelling and screaming. I thought they were happy to see me, but when I opened the door to our shack, I saw that everything we owned was neatly packed in cardboard boxes, meaning that they're moving again, unfortunately. All right, so that was chapter 9. I'm going to talk about the assignment I would like for you to do to complete, and then I'm going to tell you what chapter I would like you to read, which is obviously chapter 10. All right. Okay, so I'm going to show this to you, and then I'm going to take it off and read it. So if you need to pause it, go ahead and pause it. Okay, so a flat character is, so this is a literary term. A flat character is one who does not change over the course of a story. A round character is one who visibly changes over the course of the story. So this doesn't necessarily mean physical change. It can. A lot of times it means they've changed in the way that they see things or the way they interact with people, or they've gained new personality traits, they've become more confident, anything like that. So our prompt is, could Francisco be considered a flat or round character? Be sure to use 2 pieces of evidence in your response. The reason I'd like you to use 2 pieces is because if you're saying that he is not a round character, then you might want a piece of evidence from the beginning and a piece of evidence more closer to where we are right now to show that he stayed the same. If you want to say he's a round character, you would do the same thing, but the thing you choose previously in the book and the thing you choose now would show that he's changed somehow. I'm going to give you a little hint. He is our protagonist. Even though this is a true story, he is still a character. So most of the time, characters that are main characters do go through some sort of change. At the bottom, it was kind of small, but it's the same acronym we've been using. Okay, so it's RACES, RACES, but 2 C's and 2 E's because you need to cite evidence twice and you need to explain that evidence as well. So you will explain twice. Okay, so here it is again, if you want to look at it. If you're in my class, there is a place on Moodle for you to submit this, and there are other assignments that I have for you. The only other thing that I need you to do, unless you're in my class, is read chapter 10, because we're going to review chapter 10 next week, and I will read chapter 11 with you. All right, so once again, if you're one of my students, please check Moodle for other things that I have posted for you. But thank you guys so much for joining me this week. Keep watching my videos. By the end of May, when school was meant to end, we will have finished reading the book, and you can complete the assignments as you wish and submit them as you wish, but they're good assignments and they'll keep your brain working. So once again, thank you guys, and stay tuned for my next video.
Hi there, my name is Mrs. Paula Allen. I'm a St. Tammany Parish public school teacher. I am an instructional coach and an interventionist, and I just love writing. So today I'm going to share with you a little writing boot camp that I did with some of my 5th graders. This boot camp is appropriate for any 4th, 5th, or 6th grader, and our objective today is to learn how to make our writing more descriptive. We all want our readers, or whoever reads our writing, to be able to visualize what we are trying to say in a clear manner. So today, you will need a pencil and paper, or if you have a writing journal at home, you can do this work today that we're doing in your writing journal. Feel free to use a page in that journal, and if you don't want to use a pencil and you want to use markers, that's fine. So you'll need to collect those things. Okay, so to start off, the basic building blocks of our writing, are words. We use words to communicate. Then we take those words and we combine them into sentences. Today, we are going to look at sentences. What do all sentences need to be a sentence? I'll let you think about that for a minute. What do all sentences have to have? Well, we know that all sentences must have a capital letter and ending punctuation, but is that all that a sentence needs? Think about that for a minute. I know you probably remember that all sentences must also have a subject and a predicate. We call these basic sentences on your screen right now simple sentences. Think of them as kernel sentences, like a kernel of popcorn that hasn't popped yet. You know, like those popcorn kernels at the bottom of the bag that are so aggravating you can't eat them and you wish they would have popped so that you would have had more popcorn. Simple sentences are just like that, pieces of popcorn that haven't popped yet. They basically tell a basic subject and predicate, or they tell who or what did what. The subject part of the sentence is the who or the main actor. Sometimes it's not a who, it could be a what, whoever that main actor is. The predicate is the did what of the sentence. What did that subject do? It's the doing part, okay? So let's look at these sentences. These 3 sentences on your screen are all simple sentences. For example, the snow fell. Who or what is this sentence about? Our subject of this sentence is the snow. Let's look at the next sentence. Lucy found it. What is the subject of this next sentence? Who or what is the main actor? Good. Lucy is our subject. Now, look at those two sentences. We have our subjects. Let's look at the first one. The snow fell. The snow is our subject. So now what is our predicate? What did the snow do? Did what? That's our predicate. What did the snow do? You're right, it fell. There's our predicate. Lucy found it in our second sentence. Lucy is our subject. What's the predicate? Good. Found it. Now let's look at this next sentence. They fought. What or who is this sentence about? What is the subject, the who or the what? Good. They. What's our predicate? What did they do? They fought. Well, these sentences are pretty good. They're okay. But they are not popped yet. They could be much better. Let's look and learn how to make these simple sentences, simple kernel sentences pop. Let's go back. If we add a when part, a where part, a how part, or a why part, our writing becomes more clear and it has clarity. Now, to recap, a simple sentence has two parts. It has a subject and a predicate. A who or what, that's your subject, and a did what, that's your predicate. Look at this simple subject. Percy ran. Now we are going to pop this sentence, okay? So just to review, this is a simple kernel sentence because we just have a subject and we have a predicate. Now, let's try to add a few more details about what we know in regards to a time when Percy Jackson had to run. Now, my fourth graders out there, you've read a time, I'm sure with your teacher, when you're reading The Lightning Thief about when Percy had to run. Fifth and sixth graders, this is one of your most favorite stories. You should be able to remember at least one point in time in The Lightning Thief when Percy Jackson had to run. Okay, let's add a when part. So Percy ran. Let's do from the beginning, after the car wreck. Now, let's add a where part. Well, the story says he's on a grassy hill. Now let's add a why part. Why did he run? There was a monster. Remember the Minotaur? Now let's try it. Let's take all of these parts and put them together. Oftentimes, writers use the when part at the beginning to start their sentence and then put a comma after it. You can put a when part at the end or the beginning, but let's just try it at the beginning. So if I take Percy ran, right here, as my simple kernel sentence, and then I'm going to add these parts to it. Let's look at what that'll look like. So here we have the when part. After the car wreck, that's our when, Percy ran. There's our simple sentence. Where did he run? I had on a grassy hill, but I just put down the grassy hill. Why? There was a monster. So to get away from the monster. There you go. I've taken this tiny sentence, simple sentence, and now I have turned it into a quality, complex sentence. All right, let's look at the next slide. Okay, now you're going to need your notebook or a piece of paper and a pencil or a writing utensil for this next activity. It is your turn to practice expanding a simple sentence. First, I've got a sentence for 4th grade, a sentence for 5th grade, and a sentence for 6th grade. Write your sentence in your notebook. Click. After you've written your sentence in your notebook, underneath that sentence, directly underneath that sentence, I want you to write these question words. List these question words like I have them underneath your sentence. And I'll just wait a few minutes so everybody can get that copied. All right, for 4th grade, your sentence is, she disappeared. And you should have just the words when, where, how, and why underneath. That is it, just those question words. 5th grade, your sentence is, the snow fell. And then you've got the words when, where, how, and why. 6th grade, your sentence is, Kit jumped. And then when, where, how, and why. Okay. Now, 4th grade, first you have to decide who she is. Maybe it's Mrs. Dobbs in The Lightning Thief, or maybe it's someone else. Maybe she is a family member of yours. For 5th grade, have you ever seen snow fall? Maybe you could think about the snow in Narnia. In 6th grade, when did Kit jump? Where was she? Why did she jump? Fill in at least 3 of the question words below your kernel sentence now. So what I mean by filling in 3 of the question words, just right next to the word when, you're going to write when she disappeared. Just fill in those words. Fifth grade, when did the snow fall? Maybe it was when Edmund met the White Witch. When did Kit jump? Was it after she saw the toy floating in the water? Or you can choose another time. Then you're going to fill in where, and then choose one of these, either a how or a why. And I'll give you another few seconds to finish that. Sorry about that beeping noise in the background. All right, you should have a when part, a where part, and either a how or a why part. Okay? Listed in your notebook or on your piece of paper. You ready? You're going to be really amazed by your writing. Okay. So, 4th grade, your kernel sentence or your simple sentence was she disappeared. 5th grade, your simple sentence is the snow fell. And if you're a 6th grader, you have Kit jumped written. Now, I want you to try to take all of your pieces that you have written underneath, your when, your where, and either your how or your why, and we're going to put them all together to create a sentence. It might help if you try to use the when part to begin your sentence. And then notice there is a comma, okay, right here after the when part. I'll let you write your when part. Now make sure you put that comma after the when. Now add your who did what. That's your basic kernel sentence, whichever one it is. And now add your where part and either your how or your why. Give you a few more seconds to finish writing that beautiful sentence. Now look at your sentence that you wrote in your notebook. Did you remember to start it with a capital letter? Did you end it with the correct punctuation? Read that sentence out loud to yourself or to a parent or someone that's there with you right now. How does it sound? I'm sure it sounds wonderful. Are you impressed with yourself? I bet you are. All right. Now, here are some more sentences that you can practice with. Can you expand these sentences? Go ahead and copy down your other 2 sentences for your grade and use the same strategies using those question words. After you write your sentence, I want you to play around with it. Can you put the when part at a different part of your sentence? Can you rearrange the parts, the when, the where, or the why, and put different parts at the beginning and the end? Does it change the meaning of the sentence if we do that? These are some things that help your writing sound better and make your writing more clear for whoever is reading it. I hope you've enjoyed today. Thank you for watching and participating with me on this writing journey. I'm sure you did a great job. Remember, you can watch this again, and if you want to try the other sentences, it's fun. You can make a contest out of it. You could do this with your parents your cousins, whoever you have there at your house. Everybody can do this, and everybody can work on making good quality sentences. Sometimes you can do it and make them funny sentences. Just have fun with words. That is what today is all about. And I hope you have found that you too today can be a wonderful writer. And I hope you love writing one day, soon.
Let's all jog in place. Let's get our bodies warmed up before we begin our workout for the day. So today I have 10 exercises that we are going to do for 30 seconds each. And then we're going to rest for 10 seconds in between each exercise. So we're going to do that 2 rounds. In other words, exercise 1. We'll do that for 30 seconds. We'll rest for 10. Then we'll do exercise 2 for 30 seconds. We'll rest for 10. We'll repeat all 10 exercises. Then we'll start from the beginning. How does that sound? Are we ready to work out? All right. Let's get started. All right, exercise 1 is going to be squats. So I'm going to demonstrate that one while you're taking a 10-second rest. I'll demonstrate the second one. So, first exercise. Oops.
Squats.
Squats. All right, 30 seconds of squats. Make sure you're sitting back on your heels. Keep that back straight. Make sure your knee is not going over your toes. So you're sitting back as if you're trying to sit on a chair, but the chair is not there. So we are working those quadriceps.
Rest for 10 seconds.
You're going to get a break for 10 seconds coming up.
3, 2, 1.
Now I'm going to demonstrate. You're going to do a squat,
next.
then
Squat,
a lunge.
Lunge for
and
30
a lunge.
seconds. 3, 2,
All right, here we
1.
go. 30 seconds.
Squat, lunge,
Squat,
lunge.
lunge, lunge. When you're doing those lunges, make sure that you have 90 degrees in the front leg and the back leg. You're pushing back off that heel. So squat, lunge, lunge.
Up next. Rest for 10 seconds.
Lunge,
3,
lunge.
2,
Woo,
1.
okay, you get a 10-second break. Now we have those burpees.
Up
You're going
next.
to go to the
Repeat
floor,
for 30 seconds.
chest on the ground, push your body
3,
up, tuck the knees
2,
under and jump up.
1.
All right, let's
Repeat.
try that together. Burpees. Now, if that's too hard, you can do a squat thrust. Just throw the legs out behind you, tuck them back in under your body and jump up. Or you go all the way down to the ground and push yourself up and jump up. Here, just bring the legs out, bring them back in, and jump up. Or all the way down to the
Up
ground.
next. Rest for
Chest
10
is down.
seconds.
Just make sure you jump
3,
up each
2,
time.
1.
Take a break.
Rest.
Woo, what do we have?
Up
Side
next.
lunges.
Side lunge for 30
So,
seconds.
We're going to lunge to
3,
each side.
2, 1.
There we go.
Side lunge.
Now, I'm putting my arm in the middle for balance. But you can just keep your arms by your side. This helps you balance when you have the opposite arm up. So, this leg out, opposite arm up. These are working those inner thighs and those quadriceps. So those quadriceps,
Rest for 10
the front
seconds.
of the thighs, get a lot of work
3,
today.
2,
And here's that
1.
rest.
Rest.
Woohoo! All right, tricep
Up
push-up.
next.
Mountain
Tricep
climber.
push-up mountain climber for 30 seconds.
Tuck your
3,
elbows in.
2,
Tricep
1.
push-up.
Tricep
Mountain
push-up
climb.
mountain climber.
That's too hard, drop to your knees. Tricep push-up. Come back to your toes, mountain climb. So, tricep push-up on your knees, up to your toes, mountain climb. Or, right here on your toes, tricep push-up, woo, mountain climb. Or down on your knees.
Up next.
Tricep
Rest for 10
push-up.
seconds.
Mountain climb.
3,
These are very
2,
hard on your toes.
1.
So,
Rest.
woo, take a break. Next
Up
exercise
next.
is broad jump,
3
three
jumps for
jumping
30
jacks.
seconds.
Broad
3,
jump,
2,
1,
1.
2,
Frog jump.
3.
3
So
jabs.
that's a jump forward. Woo! Plant, stand up. 1, 2, 3 jumps. Jump as far as you can. Stand up. 1, 2, 3. Jump as far as you can. Plant, stand up. 1, 2, 3 jumping jacks. Jump as far
Up
as you
next.
can.
Rest
Stand
for 10
up.
seconds.
1, 2,
3, 2,
Woo!
1. Rest.
Rest. I demonstrate.
Up
Skiing.
next. Skiing for 30
Side to
seconds.
side. Just like
3,
that.
2,
And here we
1.
go. 30 seconds. Woo! Now you should feel like you've been working. We're almost done with the first round of these exercises. And on the next round, Coach Gonzalez will be taking 10-second breaks. Because if you're putting forth a lot of effort, you should need that 10-second break. If you
Up
want to
next.
speed your skiing
Rest
up,
for 10 seconds. 3,
whew.
2, 1.
All right. And jump rope.
Up
Like you
next.
pretend like
Jump
you're
rope
jumping
for
rope.
30 seconds.
If you have a real jump rope,
3,
grab it.
1.
Now, if you want to
Jump
just
rope.
do an easy jump rope, right here. Take it down a notch. This is making the heart rate go up. You need a little bit of a breather. Take it down a notch. Now, what I mean by that is you're not working quite as hard. You're like actively resting. You're not sitting still. You're still
Up
moving,
next.
but
Rest for 10
it's not
seconds.
wearing you out as much as if
3,
you're going full
2,
blast jump rope.
1.
Woo!
Rest.
All right, hand release push-ups. So,
Up next.
you do
Hand
it.
release push-ups for
You get a
30
push-up
seconds.
position,
3,
hands right on your
2,
shoulders,
1.
down to the ground,
Hand release
feet and hands
push-ups.
off the ground. Push yourself up, keeping that body completely straight. Don't let the butt up in the air. Don't let it sag down. Straight body. Push yourself up and down. So, every chest on the ground. Push the hands up, feet up. Push yourself up. Chest on the ground, hands up, feet up. Woo!
Up
Push up.
next. Rest for 10 seconds.
Then, I think,
3,
woo!
2,
We got a break
1.
coming.
Rest.
Our last exercise is a plank hold. So
Up
you're just going
next.
to hold the plank
Plank
position
hold for 30 seconds.
Here we go.
3, 2, 1.
All right, we're going to
Plank
hold
hold.
the plank just like this. Now, if you're not comfortable holding like that, drop to your elbows and hold. Just as long as your butt is not up in the air and it's not sinking down. Your body is completely straight. Your elbows are right underneath your shoulders. And your arms are about
next.
shoulder
Rest for
width
10
apart.
seconds.
So just hold for about 3
3,
more seconds.
2,
Then we're going to start
1.
from the beginning.
Rest.
Woo! All right. Now I
Up
hope
next.
you remember to bring
Squats
your
for
water.
30
Take a
seconds.
sip of water.
3, 2,
And we're
1.
starting over with those
Squat.
squats for only 30 seconds. Just squatting up and down. Whew, I'm so happy that you're exercising with me today. And you could someone in your household to exercise with you. Say, hey, I found this little neat exercise routine. We could do this together. How about getting off that couch? Let's give it a whirl.
10 seconds.
Woo!
3, 2, 1.
Exercise is good for your body. Now I'm going to rest because I've showed you all these exercises.
Squat, lunge. Lunge for 30 seconds. 3,
Squat,
2,
lunge, lunge.
1. Squat, lunge, lunge.
Lunge, lunge. My friend here called it a squat. It's a squat, lunge, lunge. But the nickname of the exercise is squat, lunge, lunge. So it's actually a squat with a lunge and a lunge.
Up next,
Squat.
rest for 10 seconds.
Lunge.
3,
Woo.
2, 1.
Okay, there's that rest. Yay! All right, now we have those
Up
burpees.
next, burpees for
Everyone
30
loves a
seconds.
burpee.
3,
3,
2,
2, 1. Burpees.
Burpees.
Woo! I'm going to put the chest in the ground. I'm going to jump up high. Squat down, chest in the ground. And now, if you need an easier version, throw the legs out, pull them back up underneath you, and still jump up high. That is just a tad bit easier. All these exercises make your body feel like they're working,
Up next,
which is
rest for 10
the most
seconds.
important part. Woo!
3, 2, 1.
All right.
Rest.
Rest. And you can just walk
Up
around.
next, side lunge for 30 seconds.
Catch your breath.
3,
Deep breath
2,
in. Side lunge.
side lunge.
Working those inner thighs. Still focusing on those quadriceps, which is the front of the thigh. And I'm starting to breathe a little hard. I don't know about you. I'm starting to get a little bit winded. And if you feel that doing this 2 rounds isn't enough for you, you have
Up
more.
next,
Do a
rest for
3rd
10
round.
seconds.
You could do it
3,
2 more times.
2,
Make it a
1.
30-minute workout.
Rest.
Rest. All right.
Up next,
Tricep push-up mountain
climber for 30
Now we're
seconds.
going to work
3,
those arms.
2, 1.
Yay.
Tricep push-up mountain
Ooh, on the
climber.
toes. Tricep push-up, mountain climb. Tricep push-up, mountain climb. Tricep push-up, mountain climb. Woo, if you need to, drop to your knees. Tricep push-up, come back to your toes, and mountain climb. If you can stay on your toes, that's
Up
absolutely
next,
great.
rest
And
for
if you
10
can,
seconds.
that is also absolutely
3,
great.
2,
Woo!
1.
All right.
Rest.
Break time. Then we have
Up
broad
next,
jump,
broad
3 jumps.
jump. 3
One of
jumps
my
for 30
favorite
seconds.
exercises.
3, 2, 1.
Broad jump,
Broad jump.
1,
3 jabs.
2, 3 jabs. Broad jump, 1, 2, 3 jabs. Broad jump, 1, 2, 3 jabs. Oh, you guys are making Coach Gonzalez work hard today. I'm so
Up
happy
next,
to be
rest for 10
exercising with
seconds.
you.
3,
I hope you're
2,
happy to exercise. Woo!
rest.
Rest.
Up
Jump
next,
rope.
skiing for 30 seconds.
Pretend
3,
like
2,
you're skiing down a
1.
big mountain.
Skiing.
Now you can go slow or you can go fast. You're basically jumping side to side with both feet. Now if you need a break because you feel like you're working hard, harder than you thought you could ever imagine, you take that break.
Up next,
This is your
rest for 10
workout.
seconds.
Woo!
3, 2, 1.
Rest. Take water
Up
if you need
next,
it.
jump rope for 30 seconds.
Coach
3,
Gonzalez always needs
2,
water.
1.
Easy
Jump
jump.
rope.
Here, take it down a little bit. Not quite as much jumping. Or make it harder. And when you make the exercise harder, you start to breathe harder. It's harder to catch your breath. It's probably harder to talk. You may not be able to talk. I can talk, but I've been doing
Up
this for
next,
a lot of years.
rest for 10 seconds.
You can train your body.
3, 2,
Just like
1.
your
Rest.
mind, you
Up
are taught
next,
things and you
hand
learn how to
release
do it. You
push-ups
can
for
also
30
teach your
seconds.
body to do certain
3,
things.
2,
Okay.
1.
Hand release
Hand
push-ups.
release
Here we
push-ups.
go. Your body can get used to exercises and become better and more efficient at the exercises. That's how athletes become stronger. They do something over and over till their body gets used to it and it becomes easy. It's kind of like doing math problems. At
Up
first
next,
it's hard,
rest
you
for 10
practice,
seconds.
and they become easy.
3, 2, 1.
Woo!
Rest.
I think we're almost
Up
finished.
next,
Oh my
plank
gosh.
hold for 30
Plank
seconds.
hold and we're done.
3,
Woo!
2,
All right, I'm going to go up on my
plank
hands.
hold.
I'm going to make sure my butt is tucked under. I'm going to be looking down at the ground. Now, if you would like to, come to your elbows. Just bring it down to your elbows. I find this position harder, but some people will tell you that it's easier. So, everybody's body is different. There's no two bodies alike.
Workout video 7
Not even
completed.
twins.
3, 2, 1.
Woo!
Your timer is complete.
Yes, we are done. Fantastic job, students. I'm so glad you chose to